Welcome to your local election headquarters for a look at some of the important elections that will be decided by the end of voting on August 4th. As you watch these interviews gathered over our time covering the race for governor and U.S. Senate, both open seats this year, remember that we have debates with the Republican candidates for governor and Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate that you can access at woodtv.com, as well as additional interviews with candidates for these and other races. First, let's hear from Republican Congressman John James, one of two Republicans left in the race for their party's nomination for governor. You're running for governor for the Republican nomination. You have some company out there, and this race has been going on for a long time already. And there has been some push and shove. Give me your take of what you're hearing on the campaign trail when you're talking to potential voters out there. What's concerning Michigan people?
People are excited for change. People feel like there has been kind of a going away from the fundamentals. The fundamentals truly are academic excellence, economic mobility, public safety, accountable government, and healthy families. These are the reasons why people came to Michigan from all over the world and from all over the country. Families like mine. My dad came up from the Jim Crow South, not just for a better life, not just for a better job, but for a better life. And I feel like his grandchildren, my children, may have to leave to find it. We went from 19th to 34th in terms of economic outlook. We are 44th in the nation in terms of literacy and academics for our children. You look at we're number 2 in unemployment, and we're among the slowest growing states in the entire country. We need to get back to what works. We need to focus on the fundamentals, and we need to make sure that we're doing that. We need a change, and having somebody who has the experience in the real world to bring about that change is exactly what people are excited to have.
When you look at some of the performance outcomes, yes. In fact, one of mine just took a college entrance exam type of test. Very proud that they did very well. But when you look at some of the third grade reading scores and the math scores and some of the things that aren't performing, what can the state do to turn that around? Understanding it's not going to do it in a short period of time.
Well, first of all, I want all kids to be successful. And I believe that when parents have the ability to choose where they can send their children, where they'll be safest and most successful, that's when you're going to begin to see these kids, our kids, thrive. I believe very, very strongly that our public schools have to be successful. Our private schools, charter schools, home schools, there should be no wrong way to educate our children. We should not be gatekeeping our children's success. And so really driving accountability through every aspect of the school system, making sure that we're rewarding good teachers, taking care of their benefits, their pay, making sure that we're rationalizing the proliferation of schools. Did you know that just in Southeast Michigan, we have more school districts than the entire state of Florida? Now, which school system is doing better? There is a massive amount of waste that's just being wasted on redundant overhead. That needs to go to good teachers. That needs to go to curriculum. That needs to go to our students. We need to start paying for these things that we need, but also we need to focus on the basics. Phonics, we need to get back to literacy. We need to have accountability. Gretchen Whitmer repealed the third grade standards where we would actually be able to note which schools were educating our kids up to reading standards, and then potentially giving our kids a little bit more time to learn to read if they need it. We have to have a philosophy where we will not fail our children, because the school systems are failing our children. Our children are failing. We owe them an education. And I truly believe that a child's future should not be determined by their zip code. Every child, regardless of whether or not they live in an urban area, rural area, or anywhere in between, deserves to have a school system where they can survive and thrive, and parents should have the ability to choose that.
When you talk about economic opportunity, and you talked about your family coming here for just that, part of that equation is having the right kind of education so you can access that. But we also know here in the state, we have struggled by attracting jobs and getting the right kind of jobs. What do you have to do if you're successful in your quest? What do you have to do to make Michigan a destination state when there are some kind of built-in hurdles, if you will, because we hear a lot about regulation and how long it takes to get things done, that kind of thing. What do you do to make this a place where businesses want to be?
Yes, well, I'm old enough to remember when the Lions were not playoff contenders. But you know what? I learned in the military and from Dan Campbell that leadership can change a culture. I believe that having leadership in Lansing that treats businesses like assets and allies rather than adversaries or enemies. Creating a culture where we reward folks for training up their employees, upskilling them, and bridging the gap between the labor need and the labor availability. These are the types of things that working in concert with businesses that we can do. Treating our farms like they're assets to the state of Michigan, rather than having Deagle treat them like they're doing something wrong. Treat them like partners. I truly believe that businesses and people go to where they're treated with the most respect. We're going to treat businesses and people with most respect. With business, the environment needs tort, tax, and regulatory reform to make it more hospitable, to mirror states like North Carolina and Tennessee and Indiana that are taking our population, our jobs. We also need to have a philosophy that is more focused on retaining the businesses that we have, treating the small businesses with respect, and then reclaiming the businesses that may have left. And then when you do that, it'll be a much more attractive state. We're not going to have to waste hundreds of millions of dollars on corporate welfare to try to paper over terrible policies that are making it adversarial for businesses to survive, thrive, and grow. So listening to the business community, focusing on local control, and doing everything we can to help the labor situation we have in Michigan.
And for those who don't know you, you've got some background in this. You've grown a business here in Michigan. When you think about Michigan, you think about business, you have to think about the automotive sector. And we know that that can be volatile, and it has been in flux and it's changed. And we saw the push towards electric. We've seen a withdrawal from electric in some cases, but there is still a question about what that looks like going forward. How far do we need to diversify while at the same time keeping the strongest, perhaps most important business we've ever had in the state?
Well, that's a great question. Automotive and ag are our two largest industries in the state of Michigan. We have to do everything that we can to make sure that they can survive and grow. But we also need to diversify our economies to include tourism, to include energy, to include defense. These are all things that we can do by having the regulatory, tort, and tax reform, lowering corporate taxes, lowering personal income taxes, having the regulatory reform to address right to work, to address ESTA reform, having the tort reform so you're not having $3,000 additional cost per man, woman, boy, and girl because of the litigious environment that we have here with some of these nuclear trials and some of these third-party investments in these lawsuits. These are all things that add to the cost of doing business in the state of Michigan. And by just looking at some common sense reforms and things that are working in other states that are, frankly, eating our lunch from an economic standpoint, we can make it more hospitable for business to grow and for others to come here and set root and grow as well.
We'll be right back with another Republican candidate for governor next. Welcome back as we look at the primary race for an open governor's seat in Michigan. What began as a much larger field has now been narrowed to two. Congressman John James, who you just heard from, and businessman Perry Johnson, who says, as an efficiency expert, he is just what state government needs. Mr. Johnson, let's talk about this quest for governor. There are a lot of things that you have proposed, including doing away with a number of taxes and being able to kind of streamline government in some of the same way that you have in business and industry. How does that work and how does it play out? What would it take to do away with the income tax?
Actually, I don't think it would take that much. Let's be realistic. When Gretchen Whitmer took office, the budget was about $56.5 billion. Right? And if it had gone up at the rate of inflation, and even with all of our crazy spending and the recklessness, we would still be over $10 billion less than we're spending now. We only collect $13.5 billion in income tax. So eliminating this income tax is not like it's an insurmountable thing. You can just look at little items. 1 year alone, we spent over $11 billion when we overpaid unemployment and Medicaid. 1 year, $11 billion. We spend roughly $1 billion a year trying to ameliorate the quality of education for fourth grade students and under. In fact, our goal was to make better readers out of them. And when she took office, we were 26th in the country in reading for fourth grade and under. She put in this $1 billion a year, and what happened? We're now 44th in the country. We got worse. Thrown away because of the wrong program, getting rid of phonics. When you get rid of phonics, you make it very hard for the kids to learn. The answer is not just throwing money at things. The answer is using some logic behind it. We spent almost $1 billion to try to increase the speed of the Amtrak train by 10%. Why? We didn't even achieve it. I mean, throwing money away like this is nuts. So with my Michigan efficiency government audit, we will find out ways in which we can become more efficient. She does not like an audit now. Our current governor does not allow audits. I am going to have complete transparency. We are going to audit. We are going to be more efficient. And in the end, the people get to keep their money. Think about that, $4,747 every year to the typical family in our state.
Every dollar that flows through every government has a constituency. And when you start changing those dollars and the way they flow, those constituencies are going to have something to say about it. How do you approach this in such a way to get buy-in from not just those groups, but the 110 members in the House and the 38 over in the Senate?
Well, when you say a constituency, that isn't entirely clear. It's not clear to me that people are going to say, okay, I really needed that Amtrak train, so I needed that $1 billion. I don't think people are going to say, well, I really think Bidun should have gotten that $20 million because after all, she gave Gretchen $300,000 and stealing $20 million, it's not much. I think people are tired of the fraud, the waste, and all that goes on. And it's about time that we start doing something about it because I think people want to keep their money and realize every single state in the union, without exception, that eliminated the income tax ignited the state. There isn't an exception. Every single state that has done this has constantly had an improvement. I want that improvement to continue in this state. And Tennessee is the latest example of excellence as a result of that effort. They are just like Michigan. They had a declining population. People were leaving. Suddenly, they eliminate the income tax, and it's explosive over there. They're booming. In fact, as I mentioned before, where did Ford put their new plant? Not here, in Tennessee.
Is there a place in government that you can find these efficiencies but still maintain some of the kind of services that people expect? In other words, can you reduce the spending, find efficiencies, and still deliver the services that people want?
Mark my words, I intend to improve the services. I don't intend to have anything be cut. When we say this, I mean it. When we go to companies, the perfect example is when we started in the auto industry, we ended up in a position where they had these people on the assembly line inspecting the product and then they throw it out or rework it. We not only improved the quality exponentially, we cut the cost of production by 40%. Nobody suffered. We ended up with better quality and we ended up with lower cost. We do that time after time. When I worked with the Naval Supply Center, we had a very similar situation. So when I say this, it doesn't matter what organization you have. When you start with a mega audit, an efficiency audit, you start looking at what you can do to make the services better and at the same time, reduce the cost. So I don't intend to have anything go down. I intend to have education better. I intend to have the roads better. I intend to have everything better with our spending less. We talked about the overall theme. When Gretchen ran, what did she run on? Fix the damn roads. And man, they're no better now than they were. And we spent a fortune. I say, let's have quality roads. Spend less, get more.
On the Democratic side, there are also two candidates left. You'll hear from both of them in just a moment. Welcome back. Having an open seat for governor in U.S. Senate has never happened in the decades I've been covering politics in Michigan. This year, both races have and will continue to get national attention. On the Democratic side for governor, attrition has once again left you with two choices. Up first, two-term Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Madam Secretary, this is an interesting time because this conference on Mackinac Island was going to be largely about the former mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan. Last week when he decided he was going to be out of this race, you put out a release that talked very positively about him, the things he had done, even his participation. What does that mean with him out of the race?
Well, first I'll say I think this conference is always about the future of Michigan,
Right.
really, and talking about how we can become a top 10 state in just about everything, which is an aspiration I share. And so I always appreciate the conversations here. And as a resident of Detroit, I really appreciate the leadership that Mike Duggan brought to the city, and someone who is really committed to doing things well, bringing people together. We align on a lot of things, like making sure we are working together, that we are thinking big and bold. And so I appreciate what he's brought to the city. I think he'll continue to be an important figure in the state, and I consider him a friend. And again, we hope to continue to find ways to work with him in the years ahead.
One of the things you've done in your race for governor is you've laid out some pretty specific plans on some big issues, starting with education. Let's talk about what your vision would be if you're successful in becoming governor, because every governor or potential governor that I've talked to sitting on this porch has wanted to do something about education, yet here we are in a situation where we are not faring well when judged against the rest of the country. What do you want to do?
Well, I'll say this. First, I'm leading with a sense of urgency because I'm a mom of a 9-year-old, soon-to-be 10-year-old kid. I know everything we do over the next decade is going to define his childhood, and it's going to define the childhood of kids all across the state. So we have to act, and we have all that we need to become a top 10 state for education. We've got the plans. We've got the ideas. What I'm going to bring is a seasoned administrator who knows how to run things well, and especially in a decentralized environment, as both our elections and our schools are, is a bold vision for how we can transform our schools, not just through funding and doing away with the one-size-fits-all funding model and replacing it with an equitable weighted formula that will ensure we're meeting the unique needs of every school, of every kid, but also ensuring that we're creating a new standard for what it means to have a degree in public education in Michigan. What it means to go through K through 12 should mean that every kid, no matter where you graduate from, is career or college ready. And how we create that system is going to require us to work together across the aisle with our educators, with the superintendents and others at the local level. And it's something I've seen is possible due to my work overseeing not just our elections, but also our customer service side, where we have all local entities in our branch offices that we have to bring up to it with a statewide model and a statewide level of expectations. We need to do the same thing with our local school districts to make sure we're valuing what they have and what they need at the local level, valuing our educators, paying them better, recruiting and retaining the best and the brightest to teach our kids, and then working at the local level to ensure at the state level we're meeting these statewide expectations and providing resources for every school to do so. And I'll say this, I've talked with our former governors, both Rick Snyder and of course, Governor Granholm and now Gretchen Whitmer, to say, what did you see? What walls did you hit? Because we all did come to this with the same ideas of improving education. And the one thing I found when we look not just to Mississippi, but Maryland, who's actually moved the needle in a significant way under the leadership of Governor Wes Moore, is that you need to bring people together and you need a bold, uncompromising leader at the top from the governor's office who's going to say, we have a moral responsibility to ensure our schools are among the best in the nation, and I'm leading with a sense of urgency. I'm bringing that to the table, and I'm determined to get it done for my kid and for the kids all across the state.
I don't want to linger on this too long, but when you talked about not one size fits all, are you talking about per pupil funding that has been equalized during the Whitmer administration, which was something that was promised 20 years ago, 30 years ago? But it finally happened. Are you talking about changing that?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. We have defunded our schools at a higher level than any other state for the last 30 years. That has in many ways brought us to where we are. And so we do have to figure out how to ensure we're not just getting the resources to the schools, but we're looking at wraparound services, transportation costs, after-school support, a number of other things, early childhood education and care, not just for our kids, but for our families. So I do think it takes more than just funding schools to improve our education system. The states that have succeeded in moving the needle show us that. And so I'm looking at a comprehensive way in which we can right-size the funding, but also ensure that funding is being efficiently and effectively delivered to where it needs to be. And then on the other side of it, we're transparently tracking how that funding is spent so that we know it's moving the needle and meeting the metrics that we set at the state level. One of the things that we haven't had before that I want to create is a statewide strategic plan for improving our schools. What does every community need, and what responsibilities do are we taking at the state level, so that we can work together across the state to meet the needs of every school. And for some that'll mean the current funding allocation is sufficient. For many, it won't. What a school in Alpena needs is different than what a school in Muskegon needs. So we need that statewide strategic plan that will help us identify the specific needs of every school district. And again, as the chief election officer, I've overseen elections with 1,500 election districts. So I know how to take a decentralized operation and make sure it's meeting statewide goals. And we need that same type of leadership for our education system.
When you talk about something that affects the entire state, when you talk about housing, and the housing crisis, and I think it's fair to call it a crisis because availability, prices, interest, all of the things that go into it. You have talked about doing something to make housing more affordable, more available. That seems like a really long-term process.
I don't think it can be. I mean, certainly everything we want to do is short and long-term.
Right.
We have a long-term vision, but short-term plans for action. Our plan for improving the affordability of housing, which is critical for nurses who are trying to live in the communities that they're moving to provide care, teachers who want to work and live in the communities they're teaching. We have to ensure that, number one, we're providing that supply. And that comes with streamlining how we build homes in this state so that it doesn't cost months and thousands of dollars before you even put a brick in the ground. By streamlining how we operate and we build, increasing the supply, that's priority one. But priority two is support, making sure we're providing support for first and second time homeowners and folks like teachers and nurses who are moving to communities to teach so they can afford to live in those communities. And by investing or through tax credits and other ways, providing that support, we can ensure they can. The third pillar is accountability, because there are a lot of out-of-state developers who are coming in, buying up housing, and then driving up costs. I've talked to people who are renting and said, someone bought our apartment complex and now my rent has tripled. We need to hold them accountable because that's unacceptable. And so by holding accountable bad actors who are actually driving up costs, increasing the supply and providing support for first and second time homeowners, we can do our part in trying to solve this housing crisis. And I'm also talking with other governors around the country, because it's not unique to Michigan that we're dealing with this. So taking best practices and seeing what's working elsewhere, bringing them to Michigan is something we'll continue to do so that we can move the needle.
One of the other costs that is plaguing, and again, it's not just Michigan, but we're certainly seeing it in Michigan, and that's energy cost. And I know that the Attorney General and some of our congressional delegation have been trying to take steps, but the fact of the matter is that what you and I are paying for energy today is considerably higher than it was when you first took office.
100%. I mean, I live in Detroit, and our power has gone out 3 times in the last 6 weeks. And when your price is going up and the outages are increasing as well, it's infuriating, right? And so I get that, and we need to ensure we're ending the unfair price hikes that are simply going to drive up profits, and instead working together to ensure we're modernizing our grid so that we're reducing those outages, and also investing in clean and renewable energy, which is going to be that long-term plan that will actually reduce cost of energy over time. So we have to hold accountable those who are just driving up prices, but also work together to ensure we're investing in the infrastructure to ultimately be able to deliver energy in a more affordable way. And you've hit it on, I've released affordability plans. You've hit on all the pieces of our affordability agenda: healthcare affordability, housing affordability, energy costs, and childcare. All of it is something that I think the next governor needs to prioritize. Driving down costs across the board is a priority for me in this campaign and will be as governor. And I think housing and healthcare and energy costs are those 3 biggest priorities that we have to reduce.
Quickly, on the renewability part of energy, there is a big cost that's associated with that. And some of the energy companies have said, look, we're going to have to invest in solar farms and wind power and all of those things. Is there a possibility that needs to be integrated more slowly, or are these deadlines that the legislature put in place and the governor signed, are those drop-dead dates?
Well, I think the deadlines that the Clean Energy and Jobs Act create are actually a great opportunity for us to prioritize investing in that transition to clean and renewable energy in a way that's going to drive down costs ultimately for Michiganders. So I'm great. I also like deadlines, timelines, and metrics because I am not patient and I like to get things done. So to me, those deadlines actually do create something for us that we're required to work towards and prioritize on the executive level as a governor, but working with our lawmakers as well and all of our stakeholders to make sure we meet. And I'm committed to making sure we meet those deadlines. You know, I like to meet them sooner than hopefully we can, because I know every day we don't, we're not addressing the energy cost crisis in this state, and that's ultimately what renewable energy will enable us to do.
We'll introduce you to another Democrat vying for the nomination when we come back. Welcome back. As we look forward to primary day, we'll introduce you to the final major party candidate on the primary ballot for governor, Chris Swanson. He is the sheriff of Genesee County. He's also in education, and he's approached this race by driving tens of thousands of miles, getting his message out in hopes of making a connection with voters. Sheriff, I want to start with a pretty simple premise. You've been doing this for 18 months. We just talked about it, how you've driven 100,000 miles, almost 100,000 miles over 83 counties. What do you have to do to close that gap with Jocelyn Benson? Because, you know, you look at the numbers, I look at the numbers. Obviously, she has the advantage of having her name on buildings in every county in the state as Secretary of State. And she's been out there. But you have continued your campaign on a very grassroots level.
That's right.
What do you have to do to get there by August 4th?
Name ID doesn't mean electability. And I've never taken that for granted myself. And as much as anybody running for office at this level, we've all done things that have prepared us for that office, but also to close the gap. And I said long ago that I'm not taking the millions of people I reach per month for granted, the walk on May 30th, Ignite, Ghost, all the things we've done. You got to go to the people. Retail politics. Even if you've had all the names on buildings and you've had all the things that go on your way, when you announce your run for governor, you need to show up. And so I've been to these places and I've driven the miles that you just said, because that lays the foundation. It's like tilling a field, sowing the seed. But the last 24 days, that's when the harvest is ripped. That's when people show up and they have to vote. We've done the groundwork and it will shock people. I don't look at the polls because if the polls are right, I've said it before. Hillary Clinton should be president, Donald Trump should not, and Mike Duggan should still be in the race. The ground game is the key. Whoever works the hardest is going to win.
You are a law enforcement officer. You are a instructor at the college level. You've done a number of different things in your community, and you've traveled all over this state. What gives you the confidence that this harvest will be fruitful for you as we move? I mean, we're already people are already casting votes right now, even as we speak. But what gives you that confidence? Because when the primary is over, life goes on, right? Mm-hmm. No matter what the outcome is. Yeah. So what gives you the confidence that after the final primary votes are cast, that you're going to be moving on into the general election?
Well, follow me on this. There's 10 million people in the state of Michigan, about 7.4 million registered voters, with an 18 to 20% voter turnout. It's a numbers game. It's go to the people who are going to turn out, and not just in the 5 biggest counties, over on the west side, the UP, rural communities. Of those 18 to 20% that are going to turn out, there's about 2.1 million votes up for grabs. When it comes to Democrats, anywhere between 938,000 and 1.1 million. The last contested Democratic primary was 2018. Abdul El-Sayed, Sheree Tanahart, and Gretchen Whitmer. Sheree took Detroit, Wayne County. Abdul took Dearborn Heights. Gretchen Whitmer won because of Saginaw, Bay, Midland, and Genesee County, the Saginaw Valley, not including all the others. I only need 566,000 votes when you have a 2-person race. And when you look at the labor endorsements, there's nobody running that has 34 labor endorsements, multiple statewide. There's about 400,000 organized labor active retirees that vote. If we just have 1 or 2 of their family members vote, we win just by labor alone. But that doesn't include all the times I've come here to Wood TV to talk to the West Side, all the places I've gone. I do 8 to 9, 10 events sometimes per day, 1,600 events since I announced. Then you add on top of that, just last 28 days, 9 million people reached on social media, not even on paid media or even on news, just our media channels. Those are those things that build the foundation that are going to set the tone. I look at it on August 5th. You're going to see a referendum that is going to be announced. If you look at across the country, even last week in Colorado, you had a U.S. senator, all the name ID, all the money got beat by 10 points when his competitor, the Attorney General, was down by over 30 the day before. I look at these, this is where the grassroots comes in, and this is where people are gonna go, and they're gonna walk into a booth, and they're gonna look around, and they're gonna go, Swanson, because I was there. Just yesterday, I was at the Shiawassee County Dem Club. They have given 8 separate invitations to other people running for governor. I've been there multiple times. I'm the only one that shows up. That's the kind of thing that's gonna make the difference, and that's what people are gonna do on August the 4th.
When you were sitting here a few weeks ago, we talked about just this very thing, that you have not only shown up, but you have gone multiple times to some of these Democratic organizations or just going into different places. How do you maintain the energy? Not that you're lacking any of that, but how do you maintain the energy to continue doing this, understanding that the money and the numbers are somewhere else, right? I mean, the real numbers will, as you point out, will be revealed by August 5th.
That's right.
We get that. But how do you maintain the energy to do this kind of a grassroots campaign? Because you've been out there for a long time.
Yes, sir. I know I can win. And I'm a 5-time Ironman. I'm a competitor. I wouldn't start anything if I couldn't finish. And when I went there and I spoke to people, and every time you'd hear something that would try to distract you, you stay the course. If you look at history, and I've said before, the ones who work the hardest win. Even that was the example I gave just last week in Colorado on the Democratic side, run for governor. Jim Blanchard got beat as a sitting governor by one who worked harder. That's what keeps me going, is I'm a competitor. People have invested in me. They've given me $5. They've brought me into their homes. I owe it to them to finish it. They didn't think I could get on the ballot. 28,306 signatures later with an 83% validation rate. They didn't think I had the money. I've had the money 18 months. We have more money now than we've had. We have enough money to get across the finish line. Money in the bank on August 5th means nothing. You got to get to August 4th. So I stay the course because there's a skill inside of me. There's a gift inside of me that is my energy. I hear it all the time. Is he always like this? The answer is yes. This is what comes natural. But I feed off you. I feed off your viewers. This is what people are looking for. The party itself needs a boost of energy. Politics need people that are excited about doing something for the good of people. So I create it, but I don't get distracted.
When you think about August 5th, and let's just make the presumption at this point that you pull a victory out of this race, you're going to face one of 3 Republicans. We don't know which one it's going to be, but what is your message after August 4th if you're successful and you're running against one of these Republican candidates? What do you bring to the race they don't?
Come home. Just come home. I have a 30% crossover vote as a Democratic sheriff in Genesee County. And the victor on November 3rd is going to be the one who can pull people from all sides. I'm the only Democrat that can pull Republicans that may have voted for the president but didn't sign up for what they're seeing now. The people that Mike Duggan was going after, there was no base, but they're still out there. If I can pull 5-10% of the independents to say, hey, listen, I offer you something, a place to call home. With the entire Democratic base, that's the double-digit win. I'm not so sure there's another Democrat that if they won could do that. I'm also convinced there's not a Republican that's going to pull Democrats. It's going to be, outside of me, 51-49. They're going to try. I can make sure we can win, but not just for the party, but for the state of Michigan. That's the message, is I'm not going to turn into a jerk on August 5th. I'm not looking to just make sure that we have just one more percentage point than the other. That never wins. I said before on your show, I have no plan B. I'm not doing things to be distracted or to do for re-election. I know that by getting past August 4th, I can win the general. And when I take that oath of office, the entire state of Michigan will have a sense of this energy and inspiration and hope. That's what we've been looking for. That's what I've been looking for as a constituent.
What needs to happen in the state of Michigan to keep my kids in the state when they graduate from college, to keep people interested in a state that has traditionally been this bastion of manufacturing and that we have seen over the course of the last 30 years that I've been here, it slowly been picked away with, you know, with auto manufacturing plants moving to places like Tennessee and elsewhere, not here in Michigan. What do you have to do to make Michigan what Michigan once was?
I love the question because offline we talked about, you've asked the same question sometimes for 30 years, and you've asked it because it's not been done.
Right.
Look at the sheriff's office at Genesee County, the things we've done. So as I say, just use the things that I've done as an example of what you're going to get. The things that we've done have not been done in the state, duplicated like it has across the country. Whether it's, again, the walk, the educating inmates, Ghost, all those initiatives. If we're able to do that with one little community and market it, and you can talk to people in Genesee County, is your life better than it was before Sheriff Swanson or worse? And they're gonna say, way better. I'm not trying to be prideful, but I bring in a sense of excitement and we get things done. And that's the kind of thing that people are gonna look at to attract more people. It's all marketing. You know, if you don't tell your story, other people will. And so as a governor, you set the tone. And you get to market that across the state, across the country. And that's why everything rises and falls on leadership. I'm not just looking to be a political leader. I'm looking to be a leader that's inspirational, that can bring in manufacturing and jobs and keep people that are being educated at Grand Valley here in the state of Michigan by giving people a reason to be excited. Why do you think during different times people flee to different states? Because they love the governor here. They love the governor here. They like what's going on here. We're going to create that vibe. And we're competing with 49 states in a global market. It falls on leadership. And if you don't have somebody that has that vision, then we're going to have the same conversation 4 years from now.
If you haven't already, you can still cast an early vote in person or by dropping off the absentee you may have already received in the mail. Before you do, we'll introduce you to two Democrats who want to be their party's nominee for the open U.S. Senate seat. That's next. Welcome back. The Democratic race for United States Senate has brought the national stage right here to Michigan. Dr. Abdul El-Sayed has attracted the support of progressive members of the House and Senate, including Bernie Sanders and AOC. He talks about what he wants to get out of politics, money, and what he wants the government to provide. I want to go back to the Democratic convention because it was one of the best attended, if not the best attended ever. And to a large degree, that was your crowd. I mean, there was a lot of support there for you. You have run before. You know what this is like. Why does this time, at least from my perspective, why does this go around feel different?
You know, when I ran last time, I said something that folks weren't quite ready to hear, which is that Donald Trump is not himself the disease of our politics. He's just the worst symptom of the disease. The disease is the system that allows big corporations, billionaires, special interests to buy and sell politicians in ways that leave them rigging the system against us. We pay more for the stuff we got to buy, get paid less for the work that we do, watch our tax dollars get misappropriated abroad to drop bombs on other people rather than invest in schools and healthcare for our own. And I think 8 years on, that message is just resonating even more. We've come through a number of crises. Things have gotten more expensive. People feel like their jobs are less secure than they had been. And I think they recognize the truth in that message. And the question to us is, what do we do about it now? And we're offering an opportunity to think differently in our politics. I'm the only candidate in the race who's never taken a dime of corporate money to run a campaign and never will. I'm the only candidate in the race who has the courage to run to guarantee healthcare or to say that we just got to abolish ICE because it's unconstitutional what they're doing right now. And I think people are resonating with that, and they're recognizing that there really is an opportunity to either pick politics as usual or politics is different. And people desperately want politics is different right now.
One of the things that everybody talks about during this campaign is affordability, and everything costs more. And our wages haven't gone up to meet those rising costs. There are lots of factors, including, as you were just talking about dropping bombs. Our activities in Iran have certainly contributed to fuel prices. Fuel prices contribute to almost everything, but the housing crisis has been here long before that started, and it's still very difficult for people to get into that first home. What are the approaches that we can use to start making things affordable for normal everyday Americans to actually make ends meet?
Yeah, so a lot of people talk about the what. They say affordability, but they don't tell you why affordability. Why do we have a housing crisis? Well, because back in 2008, the big banks got greedy. They never were held accountable. We stopped building the homes we needed, and now people are saying, where's the housing that I need to raise a family? You think about our gas prices. We're dropping bombs over there. Why? Because weapons manufacturers and AIPAC want us to go to wars that we shouldn't be fighting, and now we're all spending $5 a gallon. I paid 82.89 to fill up my Jeep on Memorial Day, thinking about the people we lost in a war we never should have fought. And so it starts with corporate accountability. Corporations should not be able to buy politicians to do their bidding, to allow them to go to wars, to allow them to get away when they cause a banking and now a housing crisis. But then right now, we also have laws on the books that allow us to stand up to the likes of the trusts, frankly, the monopolies and oligopolies that are raising prices on everything. So just one example. Memorial Day, a lot of people like to cook out, right? You get some steaks. A lot of people were priced out of steaks, so they got some burgers. Some people were priced out of burgers, so they got some hot dogs. Maybe you got all three. There are 4 meat packers that control 70, 80% of the entire industry. And then they use these algorithms to raise prices on you. We have antitrust laws on the books. We just don't enforce them. And maybe if we did, we could do something about the exorbitant price of meat. And it's the same story across the board. The second thing I'll tell you is this. There is no coincidence that we have more billionaires and less unions now. Unions, they built the middle class. They built the 40-hour work week. They built the fact that we have weekends. They built the fact that our kids go to school instead of going to work. And we can have nice things again. We can protect our jobs again, but we're going to need to empower unions against the likes of big corporations.
You've talked a couple of times about not taking any corporate money. Would you be in favor of abolishing corporate money in any form in the political system?
Absolutely, 100% yes. That is one of my biggest goals. When I say money out of politics, that's exactly what I mean. I want people to make their decision, not because a big corporation or a special interest dropped $6 million of ads last week, which actually happened in this race for one of my opponents. I want them to make their decisions based on the ideas of the candidates. Come watch the debates that Rick Albin hosts. Come meet people in their town halls. That's how democracy is supposed to work. It's not supposed to work because a corporation writes you a big PAC check and then use that money to build 30-second ads that then mis and disinform the public. So yes, absolutely, I would like to abolish that in our politics. I'd like to abolish super PACs and 527s and 501c4s, all ways that corporations launder their money into our political process.
As I mentioned, you ran for governor before, and you've seen what this is like statewide. How does this time around, knowing that this is an open U.S. Senate seat, that it's not just an open U.S. Senate seat, it could be for control of the United States Senate. How do you approach this, knowing how important this race is?
I think people want somebody who has been about the issues they talk about every single day. I've been in public service now for the better part of 10 years. I started my career in public service as Detroit's health director, rebuilding a health department to put glasses on kids, take on big corporate polluters. I led Wayne County's Department of Health, Human and Veteran Services. We provided free health insurance for new small businesses, put Narcan in 100 locations, eliminated upwards of $700 million of medical debt. My job is to take what I've learned serving the public for the past 10 years and build that into a message that is clean and simple about what the problems are and how we solve it. Get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all. And then to go everywhere and talk to everyone, whether it's Fox News or rallying with Twitch streamers or talking to you or coming here, which I don't have much business here except for the debate about what we can do. But we want to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all. On the way up here, we had 2 packed town halls. On the way down, we're going to do another 4. But that's how you campaign. And so I'm not worried as much about the horse race of this. I'm worried that people know who I am, what I fight for, and what I want to do for them. And I believe in my message. And so I'm just going to take it everywhere, talk about it, say the same things to everybody, and let's see where it goes. But that's what democracy is supposed to be. And I think the party lost track of that a long time ago. We're so busy trying to have backroom conversations and take money from here to run ads over there. And you forgot that actually, if you have to pick between corporate money and a message, pick a message. And that's what we're doing.
When we come back, one more candidate who wants to be your next U.S. Senator. Welcome back. When the primary is over, either Dr. El-Sayed or Congresswoman Haley Stevens will be taking on Republican Mike Rogers in the general election. Stevens talks about reclaiming Michigan's manufacturing role and building things in the state once again. Representative, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things you've been talking about in your campaign. Recently, you said there were 4 really major issues. There are a lot of issues, but 4 major pillars that you're building this campaign on, and one of them is lowering costs.
Yeah.
And there's nobody that's watching this that wouldn't agree that costs need to be lowered. What can you do?
So, federal lawmaker running for the chief lawmaking role for the state of Michigan in the U.S. Senate. I've got day one legislation to lower the cost of groceries. I actually have a bill called No Tariffs on Groceries. because blanket tariffs on imported food raise those prices. Here we are at Brooklyn Bodega, this incredible business owner. She's telling me all about, how everyone loves their, beef cheese sandwich here that they've got, but the cost of tomatoes are now up. The other thing is, we know in Michigan, we've got this incredible manufacturing sector, a lot of craftsmanship and talent that comes through here. But our supply chain still has way too much dependency on China. And so I've got legislation to strengthen our supply chain here in Michigan, bring jobs back. And with that, you're lowering costs because you're not paying for the shipping coming in from China for those critical goods.
One of the things that you incorporated in that is another one of the things that you were here last year, almost a year ago, and we were down at the motorcycle manufacturing plant.
That's
here.
right.
And you were even then talking about building it in Michigan, getting it done here. What do you do to maintain, retain, and expand the manufacturing base that has been such a critical part of Michigan's economy?
Yeah. Well, I think the advocacy and the leadership that we deserve, that Michigan deserves in the U.S. Senate, is about focusing on the consistency, certainty for businesses. They can't wake up every other day to another trade rule or another tariff. We had 55 tariff announcements in 100 days. And that really caused things to go out of whack, here in the west side of our state, certainly, in the east side. And then you see it up in the UP, with small business revenues being down. A trade war with Canada, that doesn't work. So those are the complaints. But the solutions about how to do 21st century industrial policy, these are things that I have led on that I want to continue to lead on. I have visited nearly 200 rather. I visited nearly 200 unique small businesses, manufacturers primarily, mom and pop shops, multi-generational. And the one thing that I've seen is that, yes, they need, the good rules of the road, but they need a tax program that works for them. When you're investing in the R&D of your business, being able to have the tax code that meets you where you're at. If you're training workers, again, a tax code that meets you where you're at. And this is also why we want to have 21st century workforce strategies, things that I've been long working on and accomplishing for Michigan on the Education and Labor Committee.
When you think about some of the pressures, you talked about that trade war with Canada, and that's resulted in Canada allowing a lot of Chinese vehicles to be brought in up there, which is something that we heard a lot of concerns about recently up on Mackinac Island. I mean, what do we have to do to get that relationship rebuilt? And I know as a U.S. Senator, it's not your job, but it's got to be a concern.
Yeah, and I think back to even my time working on the U.S. Auto Rescue, and that deal wouldn't have gotten done without our friends from Canada and their commitment to the auto industry and their investments. And so, look, we need better trade relationships. We should be working with Canada to take on China, not pushing them into our hands. Let that Gordie Howe Bridge open, for the love of God. That's another international bridge crossing. And Donald Trump has said he wants to keep it closed. He doesn't want to open it. And then Mike Rogers says he agrees with that. Well, all those small businesses and automotive suppliers, defense, aerospace, they're hurting as a result of that. And then the workers are wondering, what the heck? What are we supposed to do, with those, jobs just being left on the line? You got 1,000 people out of work on Cleveland Cliffs. Here in West Michigan, same thing. We want to be working, to protect our Great Lakes and working cohesively with our trade partners, particularly the one that's right next door to us, that accounts for Michigan jobs, that bolsters our economy. And so it's not just enough to have, a few good conversations. I have worked on legislation for our bridges. I worked on that second bridge for a long time. And I also helped us renegotiate NAFTA to strengthen the Buy American content pieces so we could grow our jobs here in Michigan, but not turn Canada into an enemy.
Let's talk about one of the industries that we're right in the middle of. Just down at the end of the street, there's a big hospital complex. Just up on the hill, there's an entire mile of medical research and care and all different kinds of facilities. And the one thing they all have in common is that people struggle to pay for health care. They struggle to be able to access some of the best health care in the country that can be found right here. I know that's a concern of yours. How do you approach it?
Yeah, I think that we have got to build on the promise, and we have to achieve universal health care for every American, every Michigander. And what that means is affordable, quality, accessible health care. I think Michiganders need more options. I think we are overdue for the public option in our healthcare system. I've long supported that. I believe we need to lower the Medicare age. I'm on legislation to do that. Of course, make the tax subsidies permanent. Make these insurance companies pay their fair share, and pay a little bit more while their profits are getting lined by denials. That's not right. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And then I was really proud to cap insulin, the price of insulin for older Michiganders at $35 a month. Let's do that for everybody, and let's do that with a multitude of drugs. We just can't see people getting shut out and priced out of their health care. And of course, you feel it on Medical Mile, and we're thrilled with the innovations that come through here, the talent that we have here in West Michigan. There's, biotech research happening here, great partnerships with universities. But with those biotech innovations, people need to be able to access them, and that comes with affordability.
So you've talked about lowering costs, you've talked about getting manufacturing jobs and keep them, and then you talked about healthcare costs. The one other thing you said that you were interested is looking at some of the abuses of power that you have seen. And no matter what happens in this election, Donald Trump will be president for 2 more years. And it's going to be interesting to see what the majorities look like in the Senate and in the House and how they deal with them. But in any event, it seems that he'll still be in the White House. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, and then what happens 2 years after that, and for the next term, and who holds that? Look, I'm proud to have been recognized as somebody who passes legislation, no matter, who's president. But I'm also not willing to compromise at the expense of values. And one of the values is seeing this self-enrichment. I think Michiganders, I know they are because they tell me, they are sick and tired of seeing people go into these offices, run for these offices for purposes of getting rich or famous.
Thanks for watching, and stay with us for the most comprehensive coverage of elections up and down the ballot on your local election headquarters. I'm Rick Albin.